But I mind bringing a message this week. It just amazes me how God prepares different things. He's already waiting. And it just amazes me when I see God cares about one individual on a planet of, I don't know, Isaac, help me out, 20 billion something. Yeah, it just amazes me that He cares and minds those smallest details. If you would turn in your Bibles to Revelations chapter 2 and 3. No, I'm not going to read all that, but I want us to keep it there. We're going to kind of go through that sort of quickly this morning, maybe a bit of a Reader's Digest version of what your Sunday school class is. But 2 weeks ago or so, I was up at annual conference, and every year they have a theme. And this year, that theme was, Is It Well? Now, it's one of my favorite old hymns, Is It Well With My Soul? It's the first thing that came to mind. Now, they kind of took a little different track and spent a great deal of time going over a bunch of numbers and statistics and church plants compared to 5 years ago, and those that are still surviving 5 years later, missionaries, births, deaths, all sorts of statistics and numbers, and kind of took a pulse of the denomination itself. And I felt like, being I was the only one there, I kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on a lot of that. Really kind of boring stuff. And I thought about it a little while longer, and I realized that maybe what is better is to give ourselves that same checkup. So normally that song that I love so well, It Is Well With My Soul, we're going to change that a little bit and just simply ask the question, is it well? I looked for a yardstick, and there are a lot of different ways I guess you can ask that. But I kind of want to maybe forewarn you this morning. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm not asking for an answer, but I am asking that you seek the Lord with your answer. But I'm going to ask a lot of very difficult questions, things I myself never really thought about until I brought these things together in my own heart. The 7 letters, the part in Revelations that you're looking at, is the 7 letters to the 7 churches. Messages. Well, I sure hope that's happening out here, because if not, somebody get a stroke call.
Yeah.
Gotta make sure they're full on.
Wow. I don't know what they call that today, but in my generation, that was trippy.
Yes.
That was trippy.
And I almost went into my disco days and became Travolta.
There you go. But the first one I'd like for us to look at, and again, please understand, I'm asking questions. I want you to search your heart. I'm not looking to point a finger at anybody. Just questions that, quite frankly, Jesus brought up. And in a way, we looked at one of those letters a month or two back. But I wanted to look at the totality of them. The first one is the letter to the church at Ephesus. In verse 4 there, you're going to see something that struck me very powerfully. Jesus talks about forgetting your first love. Your first love. When I say the word first love, what comes to mind? Is it a person? Is it a place? Husband? Spouse? What's your first love? Work? Oh, it's not a dollar sign. It might be. Jesus is very clear. Time and time again in the Scriptures we see the word an adulterous people and an adulterous generation. And I know I shared with you not long ago in Hosea how God views that relationship as a marital relationship, a husband and a spouse. And we often use the term, we're the bride of Christ. But that's where it comes from. And He says you've left your first love. As a body of believers, What do you think? Have we? Have we stepped away? Have we let the fire of young love go out? We used to routines. Someone asked me, what is my fascination with change? It's the only constant in the universe is change. Everything else, time moves forward. God is a constant, and He keeps bringing us to changes. But we get comfortable in relationships, our walks. We get comfortable in routine, and that kind of comfort breeds stagnation. And stagnation, without a doubt, brings disease. Disease in our body. As followers, is this a better year than last year? As far as our relationship goes? You talk to your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, your spouse. You talk to them to keep the relationship fresh. You still talk to Jesus the same way? In verse 5, we see that there's a penalty for losing that first love. It's the loss of light. Just a minute ago, had a little light issue. But with a body of believers, that's a little different. Light is life. How's the lights? They nice and bright like they are now? In verse 9, we begin the letter to the church at Smyrna. Jesus said, I see your suffering. This is a tough question. What does being a Christian ever cost anybody here? There's parts of the world where people are executed for their faith. That's kind of easy to see. But what about here in this world, in this country? What does it cost us? Promotion? We don't want to seem like we're, one of those Jesus freaks, Bible thumpers, right? So we'll just kind of keep it quiet. What's it cost? Is there a cost? Is there a cost that's too much to pay? Karen shared an incredibly awful story this morning about a Jesus-loving family that's endured a tragedy. Our own pastor this week probably saw a few days pass before his eyes. Is there a cost for being a Christian? But he also says in verse 10 that there's a reward, a crown of life that awaits you in those times of persecution, the cost. A crown of life. What does that mean to you? Life eternal? Time spent in the Master's presence? This past week, last couple of weeks have been kind of tough for me. Defining what's important to me in my walk. And who's in. I'm proud to say that God makes a way. Keep our eyes on the cross. In verse 14, the church of Pergamum. What's our checkup there? As I read that, I begin to see an issue that's very, very prevalent today. Doctrinal purity or integrity. Just to make sure I was on the right track this morning, I spent 5 very long minutes, very sad minutes watching Joel Osteen. I don't like to throw stones, especially at somebody that probably arguably the largest church in the United States. But he's a fantastic motivational speaker, but I don't see the Bible, the blood of the blessed hope coming out of his mouth. What about doctrinal purity? Is it still important to us today? Anybody ever seen those commercials for an insurance company, and they are talking about the discount double check? I know one of them had a football player, and another one were two ladies in a purse store. Anybody seen those? Mm. Right? And the guy dangles the little dollar there. But they're talking about, she turns to her agent and says, that discount double check, what did you save me? He says, $150. Off with the purse she goes. And the other lady, well, she just got left wanting. But you know, every week, there's a double check going on, or needs to be going on right here. What comes from Pastor Denny or myself needs to be checked. He's working in Acts right now. We're going to come across a people called the Bereans. And Paul said that they were noble. Why? Because they went to work and they checked out what he said. They didn't just take it at face value. Do you know there was an outbreak at Kenneth Copeland's church compound of rubella, German measles? Do you know why that was? Because Kenneth Copeland said, how did he put it? He was preaching about, it is God's will that you prosper and be in health. Left the whole other half of it off, as your soul prospers. People said, I don't need to vaccinate. Doctrinal purity. If I took the very finest bottle of spring water on a hot summer day after mowing the lawn, I'd put just one little drop of poison in it. Would you drink it? I don't think anybody would, right? No, it's poisonous, right? But yet it happens every day very subtly in the doctrines that we hear. I said it's a double check. You need to check and ensure that what I've said to you, I try my best to make sure I'll say in chapter such and such or verse such and such, so you can look it up, but I do expect you to look it up. But the other side of that double check means that we have to be looking the other way too. And God forgive us if your feelings are hurt. Should it be necessary as pastors and teachers to say, come, let's have lunch. Something's wrong. We need to talk. But it's a double check that needs to go on. It's part of what makes for a healthy life. Earlier, Denny and I were talking about how we don't necessarily like to go to those guy physicals. Denny's paying a price for skipping a few of them. I bet he doesn't anymore. Need to checkups. A wise person named Paul Hawk. Paul, by the way, is now a retired pastor, still associated with this denomination in Shippensburg. And I've conference second year in a row. I hope Paul would, but he wasn't there again. But I've known Paul for a lot of years. He used to sell paint for MAB. Did you ever see that? The globe got the paint running on the outside? When it was just started to be a drip at the top? That's when I met Paul. It was that long ago. But Paul told me something. Asking an opinionated individual, imagine that, someone considering me opinionated. I can't understand it. But asking an opinionated person like me not to argue, he says, kind of like asking the wind not to blow. He said, so the best thing I can tell you is in essentials, unity. And in non-essentials, liberty. We don't always, nor should we, nor will we, always agree on everything. But in the important matters, that doctrinal integrity, we need to agree on. The Bible, the blood, the blessed hope. In my Sunday school class, we're touching on some of those basic doctrines. And after we adjourn for summer vacation, so to speak, we're going to come back together and look at some more of those basic doctrines. And this year at conference, they finally have merged together two separate volumes called We Believe. And it has questions. It's just tailor-made for a Foundations of Faith Sunday school class. But those things, knowing what we believe and why we believe, are your ticket from getting sold a bill of goods. While I think of it, in your personal walks, have any of us grown tolerant or accepting of sin? You know, if you watch a bunch of horror movies, you get desensitized, they say, to violence. Is it possible for us to be desensitized by a world full of sin? Questions. Lots of questions. Chapter 2, verses 18 to 27 is the letter to the church at Thyatira. That's a tough word. You know, one word sticks out in that grouping. And there are a lot of things, a lot of titles given to people in the Bible. But we're going to cook down about a semester and a half of theology here to this one statement. If God, in His infinite wisdom and understanding and knowledge, ever calls you Jezebel, drop to your knees and ask forgiveness. There is no circumstance that I have ever found where being called Jezebel was a good thing. But, you know, a lot of scholars disagree whether there was an actual person in that church named Jezebel, or he was alluding to Ahab's wife from the Old Testament. Either way, it's not a good thing. But what is fairly clear from the text there is that they also had a problem with doctrinal purity. But it was a very specific sin. Sexual sin. Just this week, I like to see who my Dolphins are not going to get every year in the football draft. But I saw something this year I never saw before. I saw an offensive lineman kiss his boyfriend. Yeah, it's a different world. I grew up, does anybody remember the name Lance Rensel? He was run out of football. He was a tremendous wide receiver for the Rams, if my memory serves me correct. But he had violated something in his contract called moral turpitude. He just simply wasn't a very good boy. We see today so many different things coming out in that area. But in this particular case in the church of Thyatira, it was that kind of sexual sin. But do we get desensitized? I've seen our president talk about basketball players, of what brave individuals they are to come out, and the whole time they're telling a Christian like Tim Tebow to keep it under the covers if you want to pray on the sideline. Something is twisted. Something is very twisted in this world. How about that? Have we become desensitized? Have we been charmed by the neon lights of the world's Las Vegas saying, come, come, come? Or are we following the light of the world? Is it well? Blows me away when I see people talk about homosexuality as a lifestyle change, a choice. Hear this and hear this and mark it well. New morality is nothing more than old immorality with a different set of clothes. It's not new. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. It's not new. It's been going on since Sodom and Gomorrah. Matter of fact, that particular brand of deviant we've named for Sodom. Revelation chapter 3. Don't you want to go through this on a Sunday morning like that? Get you through your book, huh? A lot more detail, I'm sure. The church of Sardis, Revelation chapter 3, verses 1 to 6. Imagine, if you would, that you're sitting in your home and, you know, the prayer line lights up, or someone calls you and says, hey, we got to get to the church. A letter just came from Jesus. Let's go hear what he has to say. you'd be so excited, right? Jesus, oh, surely he's heard of our amazing reputation. We are on fire. We're the largest church in Dallas. Is that where Joel's from? Dallas? Right? There's another one there. Although I do like to listen to him, but he's another mega church. I don't know what it is with Texas. Well, I guess everything's bigger in Texas, right? But you get this letter, and Jesus says, first thing he says is, man, I've heard of your reputation. You kind of sit back, yeah. And it's not a good one. Be like a punch in the belly. He says you have a reputation for life, but you're dead. Does anybody know what the most on-fire denomination was about? Oh, Denny, help me out. Martin Luther, 1300s? Let's say again?
I was going to say it's 13.
About 1300s, right? Anybody know what it was? I just gave you a hint, right? The Lutheran Church. These guys had the light. They had the fire. He just nailed 95 grievances. Can't say that word, theses, as he called them. I think it was theses. On the door of the Church of Worms. These were beefs, problems that he had with Catholic theology. It's what started the Protestant Reformation. Anybody been to a Lutheran church in the last decade? Not a whole lot different than Catholic Church anymore. And I assure you this, there is no fire. They have lost their first love. They have not just left it, they ran from it. And they ran back into the arms of the probable whore of Babylon. That's also in Revelations. Randy just made a face at me. Those are Jesus' words, not mine. But there is no light and there is no life. They may have had a reputation for life at one time, but it's long dead. Long dead. They're not the only ones. I don't mean to pick just on Lutherans. I thank God for the Lutheran Church. You know, my mother made me go. She twisted my arm every Sunday. They taught me a lot. I can still remember my Old Testament books and little rulers and things. But they're certainly far from the only one that's in that condition today. Unfortunately, the Methodist Church that only 150 years ago really meant something. It means very little anymore. They're kind of like that bottle of water with the poison, only it's watered down so far. A wise person once told me, stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. I'm going to ask maybe the hardest question I'm going to ask you today. What's our reputation? This little lighthouse. We fought the whole time I've been here, and certainly years before, to keep that light burning bright. Have we succeeded? What if this lighthouse wasn't here? What if it wasn't here? It's a scary thought. You know, there's a penalty here that Jesus is talking about in verse 3 that's kind of twofold. Penalty and reward. And he says, the penalty is I'm going to come quickly. I'm thinking that isn't such a bad thing. Except when you get to thinking about it, if we want to straighten something out, if we don't like our report card, if it's not well with our soul, the faster he gets here means the less time I got to straighten it out. Is it well? It says reward for those who are doing the right thing. There's an eternal reward. What is it? Life. Life with him. I have a friend named Jed who's very fond of saying that he may be a street cleaner in the streets of heaven, but at least he's going to make it there. I got no problem with that. I assume there's litter. Of course, maybe that's why he likes that job. There isn't any. I'll have to ask him. Continuing down that list, We come to Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. No, we're not talking about Philly, down a little south of here. But to that church, Jesus says, well done. You didn't deny me. What about that? In our daily activities, sitting around the lunch table, do we chuckle at an off-color joke? Because that's denial. Do we let our light shine so before men that they want to sit in the light and the warmth of that light? Have we denied it? Have you denied it? Are you walking what we're talking about? When we get out of here, and it's Monday, or maybe it's Friday evening, are we walking it? Are we living what we say? When we're out there in the world, we're out there in traffic. That's a bad one for me. Somebody cuts me off. Oh, am I showing Jesus? Am I really demonstrating the love and the light of Christ? What do they see? What do they see when they look in my grocery cart? What do they see? Does it make them notice that we're Christians? That we are God's people, His chosen and elect?